I was going to start out with a poem. I love to explore consciousness, research about the universe. One of my truest passions is rap music. I do rap music for spiritual wisdom. I do rap about quantum physics, extraterrestrial life, and consciousness. And I feel this poem here is in perfect alignment with this event. So I invite you to close your eyes as I do this poem. Meditate and levitate. Waves of frequencies resonate higher. I'm connected to the provider. Source of cosmic energy. We're going to be one single entity. Expansion remedied. Oneness must breathe. Exhale and let free. Consciousness to be. Experiences of you and me. Souls of interdimensional beings to feel, hear, and see this third dimensional planetary existence. All time, all time, all time. Can be found in one instance. In this realm of linearity, atoms in anarchy, quantum polarity, the epitome of creation, facing our egos, acquiring patience, waiting to let go of our nations and join the Federation of Souls. And join the Federation of Souls. And join the Federation of Souls that will take us to the fifth world. Deep inhale. Exhale, Om. Om. All right, thank you. All right, you ready to go? Okay, let's do this. So, this presentation is called Channeling Across Time from Ancient Temples to Quantum Consciousness. And I will go ahead and share a little bit about my story, how I got to this point of doing this type of presentation. But what we will attempt to uncover today, this is a 3-hour presentation I'm going to do in 50 minutes, but I've been told by multiple people to go slow, so we'll see what happens. But we're going to go over ancient wisdom, quantum physics, entanglement, non-locality, a bit of neuroscience, EEG studies, holographic and simulation models. What is nature reality? Is there science to back up what and who we truly are? And then also modern evidence such as remote viewing, people that are channeling. You experienced a channeler yesterday, Livia Devi. I'll be speaking about the science of exactly what was happening when she was channeling. But first, who am I? It's my mom and dad right here. I was born in London, England in 1982. This is the moment I realized we're not alone in the universe. I was probably 2 months old. I was born in London, 1982. And I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. And as I was growing up, being raised in England, we all celebrated Christmas. Most Indians in England celebrate Christmas every year. But Christmas was massive for me. I had such a huge family. I was getting gifts all the time. I was watching King of Kings. I was inundated with Jesus movies, Moses movies, Ben-Hur. So Christianity was a huge part of my upbringing, even though my entire life was Hinduism, right? Mandir all the time. My granddad would have Havan in his house in Hounslow in England every single week. And I was there singing bhajans. And I started realizing very soon that there's a lot of similarities between these religions. But when I was 12 years old and I was in 7th grade in England, in London, I had to go to Catholic school for 1 year. My mom did not want me to hang out with the bad kids anymore. So she sent me to a boarding school that was 100% Catholic. And in this school, I experienced racism for the first time. And I was also put in a biblical study class. And the priest that was teaching me in that class said to me that Christianity and Hinduism both evolved independently from each other. There is no similarity. Okay, there is no connection. So, all right, I went into 4 months later, I moved to the US. And now I'm being raised in the US, and I start doing my own research when I'm 16, 17. And I start realizing that there's all these connections between Krishna and Christ. And I shared a little bit of my intro. And I was like, but I thought they were independent of each other. If they have similarities like that, is there a root to all religion? Is there an origin to everything? So when I was 16, 17 years old, 1999, I started going to a place called Panera Bread in the US, and I would have different texts, and I would start looking for the similarities. And that was it for me. I went deep down the rabbit hole. The first thing I found when I was looking for the ancient wisdom were the Sumerian scriptures, the Sumerian tablets of creation. Who's heard about the Sumerians here? All right, so they say the most oldest scriptures in the world are the written scriptures, because if you go back 8,000 years ago, you have everything passed down orally. There was no written scriptures. So when we started writing things down around 8,000 years ago, it was ancient Sumer. So I found the Sumerian scriptures, and lo and behold, I found 7 tablets of creation, 7 days of the week, 7 tablets of creation from the Sumerians. That's where it came from. And almost every religion story in the world came from that text, right? Now, I've got to put a little disclaimer here. Fast forward 20 years later, the Egyptian texts are older, but they've told us that it's only 3,000 years old, but it's actually 13,000 years old. So what we've been told conventionally is that the Sumerians are the oldest civilization. And I started seeing in there all these connections, and one of the major ones was the Elohim created us in their image and their likeness. This is a direct quote taken into the Old Testament for God created us in his image and his likeness, which you may have heard of. But the original text is the plural. The gods created us in their image and their likeness. But not only is it plural, it has no gender. It's not male or female. It's androgynous, right? So the original text said that. So I looked a little deeper. Not only did they say that Elohim created us in their image and their likeness, but the next verse was talking about where they came from, and it gave directions and a map of the planet that they came from, and which planet they came from, called a planet called Nibiru. So in this moment, I'm like, okay, either all ancient history, all religions in the past are just some BS sci-fi movie, or could it be that many of these visitations that we've had from angels, from gods, were actually beings from other dimensions, other realities, other planets? So that was it for me. 2001 to 2008, deep down the rabbit hole. But I went hardcore into conspiracies because I was following bloodlines, and I thought that we were pretty much screwed and that we could not do anything to change this. But even though I was learning all this spiritual wisdom, I wasn't feeling aligned within me. I was judging the other. I judged ignorance. I made fun of people that I thought weren't in alignment with the wisdom that I was sharing, that I knew about. And in 2008 was the milestone for me. In 2008, I was sitting and I performed my first spoken word piece, which like I just did right now, poetry. And I was performing, and after I performed, I sat down and somebody went on stage and started singing a poem or performing a song called My Name is Love. And that was August 2008, a couple of months after the stock market crashed. I had just lost my job as a financial analyst, and I realized everything I had been learning, there's one missing link, and the missing link was love. And that instead of the judgment for the other, I started having compassion and empathy and gratitude for those that I think commit evil. Because in this world of duality, the only way we can understand what it is to me to be love is by experiencing the contrast. And if we didn't have that contrast of darkness, then we wouldn't have had this game that we set up for ourselves in order to evolve. So I shifted from a conspiracy mindset to a spiritual mindset. I did my first event in Ginger's Garden, Costa Mesa. And I kept doing small events. I was traveling from San Diego to Vancouver, back and up down the coast for 3 years, doing sound healing events and channeling events, living out of my car, living in hotels. And I would only be able to go to the next event if I got paid enough money from a sound healing or from a channeling event so that I could get to the next city. I didn't have to do that. I could work a corporate job, but I just felt so passionate about this wisdom and awareness at that moment that I just could not do it. I had to share this wisdom and just go on the road and, and see what the universe had in store for me. But that was 3 years of so many events. I probably did around 400 events in 3 years. It was nonstop, two a week, right? And I really started learning like production skills. So in 2012, I'd already created a Facebook group called Portal to Ascension at that point. I changed the name. And the Facebook group tens of thousands of people started joining. So I said, let me try creating my first live event in Irvine, California, where I'm from. Created a live conference, some really amazing masters there. I don't know if you heard of Bashar, but Bashar, who Daryl Anka channels, Bashar was the headliner for that event. And I was testing the waters to see if people would start coming from the online groups to my live events. And so 2012, 1 month before the end of the world, November 2012, and I literally thought, who here knows about December 21st, 2012? You guys know about this date? Okay. The Mayan calendar ends, right? So a lot of people thought we were going to ascend. Some people thought the world would just be destroyed. There was a movie based on it. I thought the ETs were going to land on that day. I did not plan anything after that day. Like, my calendar was clean. And so in November 2012, I did an event to usher in that date. It was called the Cosmic Reunion. That was the milestone for Portal to Ascension. And then it kept continuing until 2014, where I decided to do my first online event. I wasn't making any money doing this work. I was broke all the time. I couldn't eat. I had to lie to my parents about my income, right? I was borrowing money from my mom. She was supporting me on a lot of this. So I decided to quit consciousness, quit Portal to Ascension. I'm going to go back to the corporate world. Got a job as an SEO specialist at an engineering company. And then my friend said, hey, bro, here's $3,000. Do something with this money and figure out something. So what I decided to do was, let me see if I can stop doing everything in person and move everything online. So my first event was called the Starseed Summit. And I had been working with a lady that you guys probably might know of, Dolores Cannon, for quite some time. And so I called Dolores up and I asked her, said, hey, will you be the headliner for this event? She said, yes. And one event gave me half a year's of salary. I quit my job one more time. Fifth time, I quit my job for spirituality. And then I said to the universe, I remember this moment. I still have my resignation letter on my phone to remind myself all the time. I said, no matter what happens, I will never quit spreading the word of consciousness again. And if I have a moment where I need to work a part-time job, I'm not going to be an extremist anymore. Screw spirituality, I'm going to go corporate. Screw corporate, I'm going spirituality. I'm going to always figure out a way to keep moving forward. And in that moment, I've never had to work another job. Fortunately, I've been doing this full time since that moment. And now we've become a very large platform for consciousness. We do 70 events a year. There's 12,000 hours of content on our platform. You name one topic on consciousness, we have it. And our new platform actually launches tomorrow, which is a streaming conscious platform. And we do around 3 live conferences a year, one in San Rafael, California, one in Glastonbury, England, and then we do a cruise ship conference. So it's like this event, but on a cruise ship for 14 days. And then when we have the excursions, we take people to ancient sites and teach them about the true ancient wisdom of these sites. And my website is portaltoascension.org if you guys want to check it out. You can see like the range of topics. My presentation on the truth, life, and times of Pythagoras, hypnosis, multidimensional superconscious, planetary and soul liberation from Laura Eisenhower, many other events. Over 4,000 speakers on our website. And then we also have this conference in the Bay Area. So after 18 years of creating events and presenting, over 25 years of research and working with many presenters, here are some of my conclusions, but it's always a work in progress. Oops, I'm going back the wrong way. Here we go. Okay. So when I was young, my mom would say to me, when I would say, Mom, because do you guys ever watch that 1990s Ramayana show? There was this like show of the Rama. It was like, I don't know, there was like 500 episodes, but it was like the life of Rama. And so I would watch that a lot and as a kid because my grandma was always watching it. And I was like, Mom, how are they speaking to God and we can't do that now? And she said, there was a time where humans could speak with the gods. And if you look in ancient past, you see this throughout history. This is a Sumerian tablet. This is the tablet of the Anunnaki, the gods, right, that came down to earth. in-depth descriptions of how they came down, what they did when they came on Earth, and how they manipulated the DNA of the human on Earth to create a hybridized being. And these are the hybridized beings, aka Homo sapiens sapien. There was a time when the humans could speak with the gods. In fact, hundreds of civilizations, if not every ancient civilization, every ancient culture, every ancient religion, beyond 4,000 years ago, speaks about time being in cycles. The ones that maybe have come around the last few thousand years think of everything linearly. But the ones that go beyond, before the birth of Christ, talk about time being in cycles. And here's just 100 of them. I use ChatGPT to just get 100, but there's truly thousands. Like, you can find them. Every ancient tribe in the indigenous tribes of the Americas spoke about it. But what does it mean? What does it mean that time is in cycles? The question really is, what did they know about our evolution and devolution? So we're going to go over a couple of these ancient civilizations now and what they said about time. Okay? So we have the Greek civilization to start off with. And just like how we have in India, the Yuga cycles, many ancient cultures have that as well. Some of them have lost that information and they just say time goes secularly, but some of them have the details. The only one that has the dates, and I put that in quotes because there's 3 different Yuga cycle calendars, is India. All the other ones talk about the type of person that existed in the age, right? So in the Greek age, Golden Age, peaceful, godlike humanity. Silver Age, childish, bronze, heroic, and iron. The heroic age is the in-between phase between the Iron Age and the Bronze Age. And of course, we have the one from ancient India, the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, Dwarpa, and the Kali. We've been in the Kali Yuga, the age of strife, and now we're getting into the Dwarpa Yuga. Each of these yugas have a theme to them. But the interesting thing is that I have a whole separate presentation just on this, but the Yuga cycles and the cycles of time are directly connected to our position of our solar system in our galaxy. So you see here, the path of the sun around the Milky Way, that's us. We're going in waves up and down the Milky Way galaxy. But at the same time as we're doing that, we're also going in cycles. So we're going in waves, we're going in circles, and when we do that, we have different type of galactic weather. The galactic weather bombards our planet with different types of frequencies. Those frequencies create different ages of consciousness. When you go below the galactic disk, the milk of the Milky Way galaxy, we go below 200 light years below it, right? And the in-between phase of every Yuga cycle is 200 years. When we go above it, 200 years. There's different types of cosmic rays bombarding us downwards. There's different rays going upwards. And this is all, you can look at NASA's research for this. This is all peer-reviewed science on the different waves and types of frequencies. So to think that if the energy shifts around us, it doesn't affect us, is really just not thinking outside of the box and just staying within the construct of Earth. What we often forget that we're not from Earth. We're literally in space. We're on a spaceship right now, and all the things that are around us, the position of our solar system and Earth, is constantly affecting us. And here's one of the Yuga cycle chart that I go by. And you can see here, down here at the bottom, you got the Kali Yuga, right? And this one says it ends right here. And the reason why I believe the Yuga cycle, Kali Yuga, has ended, many of you might say, man, life kind of sucks for a lot of people. We seem to be fine, so maybe they're still in the Kali Yuga, right? But the reason why it ended is because of the themes. The theme of the Kali Yuga is delusion, authority, hierarchy. Delusion, authority, hierarchy. The theme of the Dwarpa Yuga is energy and sovereignty. Okay? And then we get to Treta Yuga. Treta Yuga, our telepathic powers are on full blast. And so as we're moving through this age, the Kali Yuga ended around the 1700s. And then there's a 200-year transitionary phase that ended around 1930. So the Dwarpa Yuga began around 1930. Now, why do I subscribe to this? Because not only is it a spiritual wisdom, it's also very physical. In the Kali Yuga, delusion, what's right is wrong, what's wrong is right, right? Taking nonstop pharmaceuticals is the only way. The holistic stuff and meditation doesn't work, right? instead of the marriage in between, one side or the other. And then in the Dwapara Yuga, energy. Okay, yeah, energy, cosmic energy. No, what was the first energy we discovered? Electricity. 1700s, around about then. Electricity was starting to be utilized on a grander scale. And then what happened in 1930 when we entered the age of energy? Max Planck, quantum physics. And all these atheist scientists that were there before, Newton, even though he had mystical things about himself, all the quantum physicists weren't atheists anymore. They were spiritual because they were realizing the fundamental nature of reality. And so now we're going into the Dwapara Yuga and our new gifts come online. And the gifts, one of the gifts that we get is the shift of aging. As we move into a higher dimension, right, we gain another point of time. We actually exist in 4 dimensions. Length, width, height, right? Length, width, height. The 4th dimension is me moving through it. We don't realize we're in the 4th dimension because we are 4th dimensional beings moving through 3-dimensional space. And what happens when you go to the 5th dimension? 1 more point of time. Length, width, height, 2 points of time. Now what happens? Time is no longer linear. And as that happens, age shifts as well. The Kali Yuga, the age limit was 120. The Dwapara Yuga, the age is 240. So within 5 to 10 years, everyone will probably start having the ability to live to 150. And then within like 20 to 30 years, who knows what's possible? Because the exponential curve is now completely vertical when it comes to, it's almost going back in time because of how much our technology is increasing with our consciousness. Now, this is a cross intersection of what I showed you with our solar system in a graph form. That's the Milky Way galaxy. And that is us going 200 light years above, 200 light years below. And you can see around 2012, we ended the age of Pisces, we entered Aquarius, and we shifted. We went through the galactic disk. What is the galactic disk made out of? A very high concentration of ether, right? Mainstream scientists say it's ether. Ether is the 5th element. It's the building blocks of reality. We've been in an etheric bath for quite some time, and now we're emerging out of it. And as ether increases, all the impurities, what Buddha called the sankharas, the impurities, the trauma, the karma, I call it karma, drama, and karma, the galactic karma, is now being processed because you can't go through the wormhole into another life with your baggage. Imagine transitioning and dying from this life, and you're taking your baggage with you. You can't do that, right? Well, we are technically dying without dying. We are evolving to another level of consciousness, having a near-death experience without having to physically die. But as we go into that level, we need to let go of our baggage. And that's why trauma and karma on the earth looks like it's at a level that it's never been at before, because the magnet is pulling all of it out. The Rig Veda, the oldest Indo-European scripture, they talk about those that heard divine wisdom, described it as Sruti, that which is heard. In the Upanishads as well, they describe inner journeys where the Atman communes with universal consciousness. And even in the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, these are all evidence of people talking to the gods, divine transmissions, channeling. The veils were thin back then. And here's just another few. The Enuma Elish, communication between gods, the Anunnaki, and the humans. In Genesis, Adam and Eve are speaking directly with God. Moses speaks to God face to face. The Mayans speak about it. The Zoroastrians speak about it. Plato says there was something in the ancient world called divine madness, Theia Mania, the sacred trance through which oracles and poets receive inspiration from beyond. And then what happened? We fell from grace. We fell from grace. Grace, Satya Yuga, age of truth. We fell from grace. But as we fell from grace, a lot of individuals did not want that to happen on the planet. They wanted to stay at a higher level of consciousness. So what they did was they created structures around the world that made sure that the Earth's consciousness wouldn't drop. They created not only structures to help the Earth out, but they created structures that they could go within to still receive communication. because as the age was going, as people the descendants were emerging on planet Earth, they were losing their gifts. Their telepathic powers were going offline. They weren't able to communicate from their heart anymore. They weren't able to have these powers of levitation anymore. They weren't able to talk to these beings from other worlds anymore. So they decided to create structures such as the pyramids. I've done a few pyramids. The way I met Pari was that she was at my Pyramid Knowledge Conference online about 6-7 years ago. And so I was doing like annual events just on pyramid science. And the pyramids were used for many things, but one event I did was called Pyramids, a Worldwide Pyramid Culture, where we looked at pyramids all around the world. It wasn't just in Egypt. I mean, there's pyramids all over India. They just look like vimanas. They're just a different shape. And these structures were used for many things. But communication with the divine was definitely one of them. The outer casing is definitely made out of limestone, but the outer casing had a kind of gemstone that's a cousin of selenite. And this gemstone is what they use in telephone wires in order to have relay long distance communication. So it had this outer crystalline casing that actually amplified signals from it. And you can go to the Red Pyramid and the Bent Pyramid in Egypt, and it's all over the ground. This isn't like maybe. You could still see the evidence of this crystal structure that helped amplify signals. So underneath the pyramid, there are aquifers, right? So everything I'm going to share, if there's things that are my own speculation, I'll let you know. Everything that is based on things that we've discovered, I'll also let you know. So underneath the pyramids is aquifers. The Nile River isn't where it is now. 13,000 years ago, it was on the other side of the pyramids, but over time it moved. The aquifers would overflood every season. I mean, the Nile River would flood every season. The water would go in the aquifers below the pyramid. In the aquifers are copper rods, all been discovered. These copper rods go up and end in the pyramids into a hollowed out tube. Okay? So what would happen is water would go in, electrical current from the water. The electrical current will be picked up by the copper tube. The copper tube would carry the electrical current into the pyramid, into the hollowed out tube, converting the electrical current into a sound. And then it would go into King's Chamber. And whoever was in these chambers, in the pyramids, were able to receive the sounds for either healing or communication with whoever and whatever. So they were using these devices for communication. The Caves of Malta, another one. The Caves of Malta, there was a convention that went to Malta, the Archaeoacoustic Convention it called, in February 17, 2012. And when they went there, they tested the frequency. So these caves in Malta, right, very famous, very ancient. Nobody knows who made them, right? Every ancient civilization that we know has been in Malta say they were already there when they got there. These caves are naturally emanating 110 hertz frequency. Just the walls. You say that you go in there and you play a Tibetan bowl that's 432 hertz, okay? You're playing the bowl. The walls will change the frequency to 110 hertz and send it back to you. Say you go in there and you start shouting some disharmonic frequency. The walls will change the frequency to 110 hertz and send it back to you. Say you don't have any sound. The wind goes against the walls and makes 110 hertz consistently bouncing back to you, right? You can look up online 110 hertz frequency and you'll find thousands of structures around the world, including in Egypt, including all over India, that all are made at 110 hertz. Now think of if you put on your engineering and architectural cap, okay? Say that I'm an emperor of some civilization, and I say to you, I want you to create this structure underground. But when you're done putting it together, make sure that you've done it in a way where this is the specific frequency that it's going to create. Okay? Imagine the level of intellect and consciousness you need to be at. In my opinion, you need to be at a multidimensional level where you need to see the outcome before you even get to that outcome. So we don't register it as technology like the pyramids is because most of humans' minds aren't even at the level multidimensionally to even see it as technology. So they did studies. This was a mainstream. These guys are super mainstream. They weren't spiritualists. They were just going around testing the acoustics of ancient sites. And they did some studies. And when they did the studies on 110 hertz by going into the caves, some participants said they had out-of-body experiences from the 110 hertz. And they went ahead and described what they were seeing. Depending on if you had a frontal lobe preference or occipital lobe preference, one or the other, because depending on your physiology, you would either have visuals or a feeling. So if you had a frontal lobe, you would see things like sacred geometry, different types of visuals from the frequency. If you had the other one, you would feel like meditative, at peace. So these frequencies were actually doing this for the ancients over 10,000 years ago. But what does the science say? So the reason why I showed you that is to kind of show you that not only was the ancient world channeling and connecting to the divine, but they were also creating structures to assist them in the process as we were falling into different Yuga cycles. But what does the science say that they were doing, and how is all of that possible? So let's go into the quantum world. We'll start with non-locality. When two or more particles influence one another, instantaneously, even when separated by vast distances, without any physical connection or signal passing between them. So there could be a particle in the star system Arcturus, subatomic particle, and there's one that's over here on Earth. And these particles instantaneously can interact with each other, communicate with each other, and be connected. And that completely blows the lid of the fact that the only way we can normally do that is by traveling through light speed, right, which takes us how many light years it might be away. This makes us realize that all information, all data in the universe exists simultaneously. So it defies classical physics, which says nothing can travel faster than light. The mind is utilizing, so in channeling, when you're channeling, the mind is utilizing the principle of non-locality to access information beyond physical proximity. So now let's take Livia Devi as an example. Yesterday she was channeling these beings. What was happening is she was connecting through this principle and entanglement, which we'll get to in a minute, that was instantaneously communicating with the subatomic particles within the being that she's communicating with. And entanglement. When two or more particles become linked, so the states remain correlated no matter how far apart they are, changing one particle instantly affects the other. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance because it implies the universe behaves as a single unified system. And channeling also uses this concept because the channeler's awareness becomes momentarily linked with another intelligence or frequency in the field, just two minds exchanging data beyond time and distance. Now, they might both sound similar, but here's the difference here, okay? So this is what's happening if you are having a download, if you are talking to a being from some other system, if you are communicating with someone who has passed on, right, a loved one, this is what you're doing scientifically. Entanglement, connection. This is the connection point. The mind or soul becomes tuned to another frequency, entity, dimension, and collective field. Non-locality, the transmission. Information flows instantaneously through that entangled link. And then there's quantum coherence and superposition. Quantum particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observation collapses them into one. Who knows about the double slit experiment, right? All right, sometimes I wonder why we don't just take time to think about what that really means more often, right? So the double slit experiment, I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but long story short, basically they had two boards. They're shooting photons at these boards, and when they're observing the board, the particle, the photon that they shoot, acts as a particle and hits the first board only. When they look away from it, all of a sudden it acts as a wave and it goes through the first board, and then when they look at it, it becomes a particle and hits the second board. So what's happening is when you observe it, it collapses into a physical particle. When you're not observing it, it's a wave. So now think of that about life. It's almost like the Truman Show. It's like saying that if a tree falls in the wood, does it make a sound? Well, if it's a subatomic tree, no. It quite literally, it actually doesn't exist based on this. So the weird thing is, the tree is based on physics. And in physics, it still falls and makes a sound. But the tree is made out of subatomic particles that operates with these sets of laws that is paradoxical and the opposite to physics. How can the building blocks of physics contradict physics? Neural coherence, quantum biology. Quantum effects have been found in biological systems, suggest that the human brain could maintain quantum coherence under specific conditions. Now, this one, out of the whole presentation, this part blew my mind the most. Microtubules inside neurons may act as quantum processors. So I'll explain what this means. During channeling, brain networks synchronize, enabling quantum scale coherence that access the field. So has anybody ever wondered how birds are going through the air and sky in exact synchronization with each other, right? And I've seen some weird things with birds. I was in Glastonbury last year, and there was this church there. Glastonbury is like the heart chakra of the world, super spiritual area. They were doing a vortex, like basically a tornado around this church, right? And then they would all stop and rest at the same exact second, and they would all begin doing the vortex again, right? And so now we know why. They're not sending a radio signal. They're not sending a brainwave signal. They have something in their brain called a microtubule. Just like you have eyes that can sense light, right? Just like we have skin that can sense air, we have microtubules that sense the quantum world in our brain. So what they're doing is they're using the microtubules in order to tap into the quantum field where all birds, through entanglement and non-locality, are instantly connected no matter what happens. So if these birds were in sync with each other or a family, technically they could be hundreds of miles away from each other and still do the same maneuvers because they're using their microtubules in their brain. And so they went further and they did some research on the humans. Guess what? We have microtubules in our brain. We have a sensor in our brain specifically designed for the quantum field. And when we're at the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, even the Dwapara Yuga, those microtubules were fully at use for the most part. Then they went dormant. And now we have parts of our physiology, not only our brain, not only our DNA, but even our sensory perception that have gone dormant that are now coming back online. Why am I getting a random download? Why am I seeing these visions? Why is this being from this other planet communicating with me? Well, you've done the work to get to the point where your microtubules are now firing up and receiving data. The 0-point field. Even in empty space, quantum fluctuations produce an infinite sea of energy known as the 0-point field. Researchers such as Hal Puthoff was the one who really did this for the US government because they did a lot of research on this. Channeling could be the act of decoding informational patterns encoded in the 0-point fluctuations. This field connects every particle in the universe. So what we're technically speaking of is the Akashic records, the Akashic field. All data, all information existing simultaneously in any moment. If you guys are familiar with any channelers, there are channelers that I work with that channeling the future selves, or humans on Earth 100,000 years from now. One person I work with does that, right? All time exists simultaneously. All information and data is always there. You're able to tap into all of it. Now here's just a couple of documents here to show you the research that governments are doing behind all the data I said, right? The CIA, the cycles of time thing that I showed you, you can go to the CIA's website and you could type in, maybe if you do the Google search of psychic documents from the CIA, you will find it. And they have graphs of the cycles of time and speak about the cataclysms that happen every 13,000 years because of the cycles of time. And if you look up on the CIA's website, the Stargate program, right? And then you start reading what they were doing with psychics and remote viewers to go and view other planets, you can either think like, wait a second, they're wasting all this taxpayer money on this information, or what is it that they discovered and what do they know, right? So here are just some documents from people that worked in the CIA that they're doing this research, engineering the 0-point field for interstellar flight, using what I showed you for interstellar propulsion. Hal Puthoff. He's the guy who started the remote viewing program for the CIA. Advances in proposed electromagnetic 0-point field theory. Study of vacuum energy physics for breakthrough propulsion. All quantum information here. all the stuff that we're basically doing within our own body, how can we utilize that information and take it out into basically being able to visit other planets? In this one right here, this research paper also designed for the government, framework suggests that consciousness emerges with interaction with a vacuum, meaning the void of space. So this document where they're doing research is saying that with the interaction with the void of space, the black hole, the singularities, consciousness emerges from the black hole, right? And we already know that here. What I'm showing you is U.S. government is doing research on it. Consciousness in the quantum vacuum. Now we'll speak about remote viewing for a bit here. Remote viewing program, one of the first reasons why the remote viewing program came about. And if you aren't aware of the remote viewing program, I'll give you a little bit of history. Basically, the CIA, let's go back to the 1954. So 1954, before the CIA came about, there was another program that existed basically to cover up UFOs that were crashing in New Mexico, right? And whether it was real UFOs or whether they were trying to push it to the side, you can make up your own mind. I believe it was real. And as they created this program, the CIA came out of that program, specifically designed to cover up crashes of UFOs that were happening in the US. When they started doing this, they started experimenting with all types of stuff. They had infinite funding, infinite budget, black budget program. The $1 trillion that went missing the day before 9/11, black budget money that was given to these programs. Okay, and so as they were utilizing this money in the 50s to do this, they started looking for kids that were gifted that had telepathic abilities. And they started taking these kids from their families, right? This is all out and declassified documents now on the CIA's website. They were taking kids from their families and they were putting them into facilities where they were basically working on the ability to be able to tune in psychically to remote view. And remote viewing was shifting your consciousness. Right now, I'm in a meditative state. You tell me, go to Russia and tell me what is happening in Russia right now at the enemy base. So they would meditate, they would shift their consciousness, they would go and visualize it, because guess what? All things exist simultaneously, and they were able to do it, and they were gifted. And then they were able to witness what was happening with the enemies. That's how it all began. There's a great movie called Men Who Stare at Goats. It's all about this program, okay? Men Who Stare at Goats. And so as they were doing this program, one of the first things that they did was they were just looking for terrorism. They were looking to find what their enemies were doing, and they were trying to also observe terrorists. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. So one of the first ones here, we got Pat Price. This is in 1974, the remote viewing program. And what occurred is that what happens with the U.S. government and the CIA is when a project does well, they take it off the books and pretend it's closed, and then they take it onto black budget programs. That's what happened with UFOs and extraterrestrials, and that's what happened with this remote viewing program. So in 1974, they were asked to review the site from coordinates only, accurately sketch the cranes in the Soviet Union, and the CIA report said what the remote viewers did matched exactly what was actually occurring in Russia. And then we have Ingo Swann. Ingo Swann is one of the OGs, was one of the psychic spies for the U.S. government that really founded the remote viewing program, took it to another level. And he described the planet Jupiter in a CIA experiment saying that it has rings. He was remote viewing, he was envisioning the planet Jupiter, and he said it has a ring. And they're like, no, Jupiter doesn't. It doesn't have a ring. Then guess what? A few years later they go, it has a ring. Fast forward another decade later, we have the Stargate program. Remote viewer with Ingo Swann. The CIA agent is saying, go to Mars and remote view Mars. So he's on Mars. He's describing Mars right now. And then the remote viewer says, go to Mars 1 billion BCE. Okay? Telling you, Stargate program CIA, you'll go to the CIA's website and you'll read the transcript. Okay? And then the guy on Mars is speaking about all the pyramids that existed in 1 billion BCE, Earth years, on Mars. talking about the beings, how they're walking around, what they're doing, what the life was, right? So they were experimenting with these concepts of consciousness, remote viewing, things that are innate abilities and gifts within us. They're using the same principles, entanglement and non-locality. So here's a couple of takeaways from that. There's an entirely covert world operating alongside us is one, right? This is being utilized by governments around the world. I could tell you about 10 governments that have their own programs doing specifically this. China has one, Russia has one, England has one, France has one, Spain has one. And they actually are all traded on the stock market as shell companies pretending that they're doing different work when they're actually remote viewing platforms. And then the second thing is, take it away from the external world to bring it within. We have the innate ability deep inside of us that emerges under the right circumstances. These abilities will become the norm in the years to come as we begin to rewrite the code of the simulation. Something I love to say is that we're actors on a stage that forgot we're acting. But that's the best way. That's the best way to be. I would say if we knew that we were acting, we wouldn't have been so fully immersed in this reality, right? But not only did we forget we're acting, we forgot we're the script writers, the directors, the lighting crew. We're everything. We're the coders of the simulation. But we forgot that we're the coders. So here's the question. What are we really? What is everything? Who and what are we? And what is the universe? The universal paradox. My favorite word in the world. I'm writing a book called The Universal Paradox, and it's a book about just paradoxes. And here are some paradoxes, right? So first of all, what's a paradox? Two things that are seemingly opposite of each other that shouldn't coexist. It contradicts. How can this contradict that when there should be one and the same? So here are some paradoxes that we can wrap our heads around right now. We are solid, right? Solid. But we're also constantly vibrating on the subatomic level. You are actually not solid at all. The universe is infinite, right? But it's also finite because our minds can't understand infinity. And there's a multiverse. So we're infinite and we're finite at the exact same time. What is outside infinity? What was before the universe? How could there even be a beginning to eternity? How can there be a Big Bang when everything has always existed? If everything is cause and effect, what caused the first thing? Light doesn't experience time, but it defines how we measure it. Light and matter both behave as waves and particles depending on how we observe them. The paradox of the double slit experiment that I shared a little earlier. And I shared this already, so I'll skip that. So how is the matrix constructed? Do we exist in some sort of simulation, some sort of holographic universe? Is there a reflection out of the void of the black hole that is creating all of reality? So think of what is a hologram, a real hologram. Like, I don't know if any of you know about the ABBA show in England. I went and saw it, the ABBA show. But it's like ABBA, 40 years ago in holograms, and they walked right up to me. And I'm like, what? It looked real, right? It was like a straight up holographic show. But what is that? Light particles vibrating at such a high speed that it looks like it's physical. What are we? Subatomic particles, and as Pari showed so perfectly, made out of light photons that are vibrating at such a high speed that our eyes perceive them as physicality. We are holograms. And as Jem was sharing, we have a hologram in our brain, and our eyes are the projector screens. Our brain is the computer program creating the visual, and it goes upside down at that, and then we project it through our eyes, right? We are organic projectors. And this one I had AI help me create because I always kind of had this thought that, we all know about black holes, but there's also something called a white hole. And most black holes, the supermassive black holes in our galaxies, actually become white holes every few million years. So they suck everything in, and then eventually they start spewing all this matter out, right? It becomes a white hole. And last time this happened, it was actually visible from Earth because all the energy that was coming out. So imagine a prism. And what comes out of the white hole? Pure light energy, pure etheric energy, pure photonic energy. And now you have a prism, a crystal, it reflects through it, and what happens? All the colors of the physical spectrum, all of reality. So it's like my way of wrapping my head around, how the void is creating this physical reality. Light is a byproduct of duality. Light is a byproduct of duality. Darkness is a byproduct of duality. The reason why I say that is because everything came from sound, right? I did another presentation called The Origin Stories of Ancient Civilizations. I went through 300 origin stories and I made a presentation and I categorized every single one of them based on what I found. And I never found one of them talking about God being light, not one. But every single one of them talked about God being sound, source. Even in text that you don't even think talks about it, in the beginning was the word, for example, it's vibration. In the beginning was even the Big Bang. The Big Bang, the original term, the Big Bang was a joke. That's why they created that term. They were joking around. They're like, I don't know what to call it. Let's call it a Big Bang. Like, quite seriously. And the Big Bang, because there was some sort of sound. They're just describing the sound. The sound sped up to become light, slowed down to become darkness, creating the full spectrum of ability of experience. And then we get into the shadow realm, the contrast of the shadow, the physics of the shadow. So what is the shadow? The shadow is an obstruction of light. When light shines on an object, the object blocks certain wavelengths, preventing them from reaching a surface behind it. The result is a silhouette, an area where light information is missing. The darker the shadow, the greater the contrast between what light reaches and what is blocked. So here's the science behind that. In human perception, contrast defines clarity, right? Now we're talking about the duality of the beautiful dance between light and dark, the Shiva Shakti. It's all meant to be, right? So for so long, before 2008, I was pushing the darkness away. And I was pushing 50% of who I am, right? The darkness doesn't have to be evil, right? Even though it has become that in many ways, what we personify as evil. But what is evil? Evil is a wounded aspect of creation that forgot its connection to source. That's what it is. All these people that are committing atrocities in the world are wounded children that ended up becoming adults and now have the tools to reflect their traumas on the rest of the world. So our eyes and brains rely on differences in brightness to create a dimension and meaning. Therefore, shadow gives form to light, allowing consciousness to perceive the physical world. And in the metaphysical spiritual terminology, shadow represents potential, the unilluminated aspects of consciousness awaiting for awareness. Light symbolizes truth or consciousness, while shadow symbolizes unseen knowledge. So where have we been for so many years on Earth? We've been in the shadow realms. We've been going through the darkness. But at the end of every dark tunnel is light. And the only way to have growth is to step into the darkness. I did a shamanic retreat some time ago, and this shaman told me, in his plant medicine ceremony, she said to me, when you're on this psychedelic, it was ayahuasca, do not follow the lights. The lights are a distraction. Go into the darkness. Because what happens when you're on these psychedelics, oh my God, sacred geometry here, oh my God, alien being here, oh my God, octopus here. But the meditation and the darkness shift away from the distraction, go in the light, because the unseen is where we're going. And that's why there's so much fear and anxiety and stress, because the world is full of unseen unknowns. We're constantly stepping into it every single day, but many of us are so scared about it, we try to pretend that we know exactly what's going on, that we have it all figured out, right? But we don't. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, where are we stepping into? Now, could each lower dimension, right? So now, check this out. I'm a third-dimensional being, right? What dimension is my shadow? It's two-dimensional. Am I the shadow of my higher dimensional self? And is my higher dimensional self beyond that the shadow of the one above it? Well, quite scientifically and spiritually, we technically are, because every being is an obstruction creating a projection into a lower dimension. And we get to experience the dimension we're at and everything below us. But through work, vigorous work, we can shift into dimensions that are higher. Whereas we can perceive everything below us, 1, 2, 3 right? We're the fourth one. But now we go into fifth dimension. And that's why those beings that are higher dimensional, like who Livia was channeling, the seventh dimensional collective, they perceive 7, 6, all the way down to 1. They see us as well. So here's we're going to close out on this. I think I'm almost done, like 5 minutes or something. Yeah. Simulated reality, evidence of existence simulation. Okay? The universe behaves as light information. Light is supposed to be light information. Reality is pixelated at the Planck scale, which is the smallest measurable unit of space and time. Energy and matter and even space-time can be expressed as data and bits of information. Quantum physics reveals that particles don't exist as things, but information probabilities. So now you get a telescope. You zoom way out in the universe. Nothing is constant anymore. Everything acts as frames. It's all frames. That's the resolution of the universe, of the computer screen. And we've calculated the digital resolution of the universe like you can for a 1080p or whatever, or 4K TV. It's the Planck's length is right here. May represent the smallest pixel of space. At extreme scales, motion becomes frame by frame, not continuous. Mathematical architecture of reality. Physics follows elegant equations, not chaos. Chaos is an illusion. Step outside just a little more, beautiful sacred geometrical patterns everywhere. Asteroids, chaos, the way solar systems are formed. Everything obeys predictable rules like a coded system. And the list goes on. And so I'm going to fast forward here so we can get to almost to the closing. One question I've had for quite some time is how many fractalizations are we from the original source, right? If we're existing in these dimensions and there's all these other dimensions, I used to think 13th dimension was God's source, right? But now I realize that's just one construct of this game. Imagine that you're playing Mario Kart, okay, the game Mario Kart, or any video game. And in this video game, you could die in the video game and you could become a ghost. And now you have a whole round of that game where you're Mario, but you're flying in the sky. But not until you can go into the tube at the end and fight the boss do you become physical again. But guess what? You were still in the video game. You thought you left, right? So the 13 dimensions are all part of one video game. When you transcend that and go through that wormhole into the void, which is connected to the black hole in the center of our galaxy, which is connected to the position of our solar system as we get closer to the galaxy, to the black hole, because the black hole has a high gravitational field, and when the gravitational field picks up, Earth's frequency also picks up, right? We then have another construct, another experience of reality. So how many fractalizations are we from the original source? And there are many ways to enter this simulation. You can dream yourself awake onto planet Earth. You can be on another planet. You could go into some sort of stasis chamber. You can go to sleep. You can wake up on Earth. You can project yourself in projection rooms for different alien lives. You can project yourself as a physical being without being born on Earth. Astral travel, living a life on Earth. Reincarnation in the birthing process, which is the amnesia veil. That's the way you have your memories wiped clean. And then there's bilocation and consciously existing in multiple lives simultaneously. There's other beings on the planet. There's beings from other star systems walking amongst us, existing multiple lives simultaneously. So what does this mean? And I'll wrap up in about 4 minutes here. If we live in a simulated or holographic universe, then consciousness is the source code. And we are active creators, tuning into different layers of the program through vibration, intention, attention, and awareness. And intention is key, because you can be connected to everything, but how do you communicate with a specific being in a specific area? Your soul is connected to all your multidimensional selves. You're made out of infinite subatomic particles. What's the subatomic particle made out of? A singularity. What is a singularity? Well, it's a mini wormhole. Trillions of cells, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles within you. Trillions of wormholes inside of your body. Every one of those singularities connects to every life you've ever lived throughout the universe. Every incarnation. And guess what? Earth is a gift to the masters. The duality of Earth, the challenges of Earth, only the most advanced souls in the universe were able to actually sign up. Not only did we elect to come here, we were selected to come here. And then we came down to Earth, and then we had our memories wiped clean. Imagine experiencing everything in the universe. And then you're like, oh man, what can we do next? I've done everything. Well, how about we go to the most challenging planet on Earth and we forgot we did everything and see if we can figure it out. And the beautiful thing is, we're all still finding the light within us, even though we have the cards stacked against us. Right? That's how amazing the souls are on this planet. So, pop quiz, okay? So what are we really? Are we a dream? A simulation or a hologram? Do we live within a computer hard drive? Are we real and not real, physical and non-physical at the same time? Are we a program, a virtual reality that we have projected ourselves into, coupled with consciousness and a soul? Or are we all of the above? You can tell me your answer later. So they all spoke about it. Cycles. We're going back in cycles. We're on our way up, guys. We have things to look forward to. Regardless of what is happening, humanity is waking up. There is a way to live on this planet that works for everyone. We have a universe of experiences waiting for us to remember, right? The scarcity mindset, those that go with and those go without. We have a universe of abundance, but we've been programmed to believe that we don't. So it's time to get behind the wheel and drive through reality consciously. It's time for us to break free from the cycles of forgetfulness and reach the greatest of heights that we can imagine and dream of. Reality is a very real dream paradox. And once we become lucid within it, awaken the dream, like you have a lucid dream, we're becoming lucid now. We can only imagine what we will see, feel, and experience. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And so quick announcement. After I'm done and get off stage, since we are running late and dinner I think goes to 8:30, but we are going to do a 15-minute light language session where there's going to be 4 of us on stage. So if you're interested in staying and receiving light language transmission between 4 of us on stage, then please do. We'll do that for about 15 minutes after I get off here. Are we still doing it? Oh, we're not? Okay, no, never mind. Scratch that. So you can find it online, okay? All right, so thank you, guys.
Thank you. It was a real power-packed wisdom talk, isn't it? Yes. So now we realize we are not just bodies, we are not just souls, we are multi-dimensional beings. We have the potential to access any dimension just with meditation, silencing our mind, getting to the inner core. Right? Yes, let's give a big round of applause to Neil Gaur for bringing this wisdom onto our stage. Thank you so much, Neil.